So back when DICE first announced Battlefield 5, they revealed a new game mode called Grand Operations, and since then we've had tons of information come through. So for today's episode of Battlefield 5 in detail, I wanted to provide an overall look at Grand Operations. Now essentially, Grand Operations is a scaled up version of Operations from Battlefield 1, but unlike Operations, Grand Operation takes place over 3 to 4 days, with each match being 1 day. Another change from Battlefield 1 is that if the attacking team failed to take all objectives within 3 tries, then the match would end with them losing. Of course, if they could take all the objectives and get to the end of the map, it would advance to the next map where they'd have to do the same thing, and if they lost 3 lives or 3 tries over those maps, they'd lose the entire game. Now in Battlefield 5, no matter who wins day 1 or 2, the match will always advance to day 3. Now in the beta version of Grand Operations, the game began with day 1 being an airborne mode where the attacking team had to destroy 4 artillery guns. In essence, the airborne mode is really the early paratroopers attacking before the main force arrives on day 2. So with day 1 being the initial attack and the paratroopers landing, day 2 consists of the breakthrough game mode, which is essentially the main army arriving, beginning the full attack. This is basically identical to Operations in Battlefield 1, with there being 2 flags or 2 or 3 flags that the attacking team needs to take in order to advance to the next objective. I imagine that breakthrough will be used on essentially every map in the game, and more than likely will always be the second game mode, just based on the way it works and just based on the fact it was the original Operation mode. Now day 3 will more than likely involve the frontline game mode that we saw in the French DLC from Battlefield 1. Now the reason for this is because you can end the game in a tie, and because being day 3 it's essentially that the attacking team has now landed, they've broken through, and now the defending team has to make a stand or lose entirely. Now of course whoever wins day 3 is the ultimate winner of the Grand Operation, regardless who won day 1 or 2. Now if day 3 ends in a draw, then the game advances to day 4, which is in essence a mini battle royale mode with limited loadouts, very little ammo, and extreme weather conditions. The last team standing wins the match entirely. Now DICE has said that day 4 will hopefully be very rare and will only happen a few times every 100 games or so, but in essence it can either end with 32 players still being alive on one team and the other team being wiped out entirely, or it can end with a one-on-one situation where the last player alive wins the game for his team. Now having heard all of that, you're probably thinking, what's the point of having day 1 and 2 if day 3 is the ultimate decider? Well, the reason for that is that the first 2 days will have an effect on the third day overall. So if the defensive team wins day 1 and day 2, the attacking team will have less tickets in order to work with in day 3 and therefore have a smaller chance of actually winning the game. Ultimately, if the defense also dominates day 1 and day 2, they carry over a big advantage into day 3, giving them the greater chance of winning. Of course, if both teams win 1 day each, then there is no advantage to either team and it carries over into the next game with it being a very level playing field, basically meaning that day 3 really is the ultimate decider. Now of course in the beta we only had access to day 1 and 2, so we only saw how day 1 influenced day 2. We don't know exactly how both 1 and 2 affect day 3. It will more than likely just be the number of tickets available. Of course the last mode is frontlines, so it'll either be they have more objectives to start with than the defensive team if they can dominate, or they'll start with a lot more tickets, giving them a much bigger advantage. I imagine it will be the second one. What we do know is that the amount of objectives you take out on the attacking team does give you more tickets. If you take out all 4 objectives, you'll get a big ticket boost for day 2. If you take out all the objectives on day 2, you'll get a even bigger ticket boost for day 3. So it really is about who can get the biggest advantage moving into the final day 3. And of course day 1 and 2 will take place on the same map, while day 3 and obviously day 4 if it happens will take place on a different map. Now I imagine that Grand Operations is still subject to change before the full release of the game, and depending on the maps, obviously the game modes will be different. So on a coastal map, maybe there'll be a beach landing rather than an airdrop. So personally, I'm really excited for Grand Operations, and I hope that DICE can make things interesting, bring us new invasions, new airdrops, rather than keeping it the same thing in every map. Now at the moment I'm trying to make a bunch of videos for you guys because I'm currently moving to university, so hopefully I can make a bunch of videos and then release them while I'm moving in. Obviously I'll still be making videos after that point, but they probably won't be in such a large velocity, and there definitely will be a slight stagnation period as I move in and get used to moving in. But regardless, hopefully you guys did enjoy. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.